I am Archangel Michael, and I speak to you now of a shift that has already occurred at a level you do not control and could not influence. Someone who carries authority to decide, to approve, to allow, to open, or to release, has been moved internally. This movement did not begin today, but today is when it crosses from internal inclination into outward action. What was once neutral has turned favorable. What was once distant has become attentive. This authority was not persuaded by argument. They were not pressured by urgency. They were not convinced by repetition. The change began quietly, within their own awareness, without your presence or effort. Something about your situation surfaced in their thoughts at the right moment, not as a problem to avoid, but as a matter requiring consideration. That shift alone changes everything. Authority does not move randomly. Those who carry responsibility are cautious by nature. When they shift position, it is because clarity has replaced hesitation. Somewhere within their thinking, resistance softened. Doubt loosened its grip. What once felt uncertain began to feel appropriate. This did not happen emotionally. It happened decisively. You may not know who this person is yet. You may not recognize their role or realize the scope of their influence. That is intentional. Favor rooted in authority often works best when it develops without expectation. When you are unaware, pressure is absent. When pressure is absent, decisions remain pure. This authority did not wake up intending to bless you. The movement was subtler than intention. It was awareness, a realization, a moment where your name, your situation, or your needs surfaced without force. And when it did, it remained. That is the difference between passing thought and deliberate consideration. Your matter did not pass through their mind, it stayed. Do not assume this blessing will arrive loudly or dramatically. Authority often acts quietly, especially when integrity is involved. The most consequential decisions are rarely announced before they are executed. They are prepared, structured, and then released at the appropriate moment. Today matters not because something begins, but because something advances. The shift has already occurred. What remains is expression. When authority aligns internally, external movement follows naturally. There is no need for persuasion once that alignment is in place. You may sense this shift as a subtle easing of pressure, a quiet confidence you cannot explain, a feeling that something is finally turning without your effort. That awareness is not imagination. It is your perception adjusting to a change that has already taken place beyond you. Remain composed. Do not rush ahead of what is unfolding. You are not required to prove readiness. You are not required to position yourself aggressively. Authority-based favor does not respond to force. It responds to timing. Someone in authority has already been moved. What follows will not require struggle. It will require awareness. And today marks the point where that movement begins to touch your reality. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now to clarify something essential. This movement of authority was not manipulated, negotiated, or influenced by your effort. You did not persuade this person. You did not say the right words at the right time. You did not present yourself perfectly or prove your worth beyond question. What shifted within them did so freely, without pressure, without obligation, and without your awareness. This matters because favor that is forced is fragile. Decisions made under pressure are easily reversed. But when authority moves voluntarily, it carries stability. The inclination that formed within this person did not arise from guilt, fear, or convenience. It arose from clarity. Something aligned within their judgment. Something settled. And when authority settles internally, it does not need justification to act. You may have assumed that progress only comes through relentless explanation, through repeating your case, refining your arguments, adjusting your tone. But what moved this authority was not presentation. It was recognition, a moment where understanding replaced uncertainty, where what once felt complicated became straightforward. That kind of shift cannot be manufactured. This person did not feel pushed. They did not feel cornered. They did not feel obligated to respond favorably. That is precisely why the response that follows will feel natural rather than conditional. When favor flows freely, it does not carry hidden costs. It does not demand repayment through compliance or silence. It simply moves forward because it makes sense to do so. Do not underestimate the power of unforced alignment. It creates decisions that stand. It produces actions that endure scrutiny. It generates outcomes that do not need constant reinforcement. What is unfolding now rests on that foundation. You may never know exactly what caused this internal shift. Often, the reasons remain private. A reflection, a comparison, a realization formed quietly. You are not meant to trace the process. You are meant to benefit from the outcome. Knowing too much about how authority decides can create unnecessary tension. Trust replaces explanation here. This also means you do not need to maintain this favor through performance. You are not being watched for mistakes. You are not walking on unstable ground. When authority moves freely, it does so with confidence in its own judgment. That confidence extends protection to what it supports. Remain at ease. Do not rehearse conversations prematurely. Do not prepare defenses for challenges that will not come. What is approaching will not feel adversarial. It will feel cooperative. That is how you will recognize its origin. Favor without manipulation carries a different weight. It does not fluctuate with mood or circumstance. It proceeds because it has already been resolved internally. And what has been resolved does not need to be revisited. This blessing moves forward not because you asked loudly enough, but because authority chose clarity over hesitation. That choice stands. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of the moment your presence entered their awareness, not through request, not through insistence, but through recognition. Your name, your situation, your matter did not surface because you forced attention. It surfaced because timing opened a window in their perception, and when it did, it carried weight. This was not a casual thought. It was not fleeting curiosity. It was the kind of awareness that pauses movement, that causes reflection, that interrupts routine. Something about you stood out without effort, not because you demanded notice, but because alignment made your situation relevant at the exact moment authority was receptive. You must understand how rare this is. Authority filters constantly. Decisions, requests, names, and cases move past attention every day. Most are dismissed quickly, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. For your name to remain present, it meant it matched a need, a question, or a decision already forming. That is how recognition works. It connects rather than competes. This authority did not think, I should help. They thought, this fits. That distinction matters. Help can be delayed. Fit creates movement. When something fits into an existing structure, it does not need justification. It belongs recesses naturally into place. You may believe your circumstances are ordinary, your position unremarkable, your situation common. But recognition does not operate on appearance. It operates on alignment. Something about your timing, your readiness, your consistency matched what this authority was already prepared to act on. That is why awareness settled instead of passing. You were not compared unfavorably. You were not measured against others in a way that diminished you. Comparison works differently when alignment is present. Instead of competition, there is clarity. Instead of ranking, there is placement. Your situation found its place. This recognition did not come with scrutiny meant to disqualify. It came with assessment meant to confirm. And confirmation came quickly, not because standards were lowered, but because your readiness was evident. The pause you experienced earlier was not uncertainty, it was verification. Do not assume this recognition makes you indebted. It does not. Recognition rooted in alignment creates responsibility, not obligation. The authority involved is not expecting compliance. They are expecting coherence. That is why what follows will feel respectful rather than controlling. You may notice small shifts soon, tone changes, openness where there was formality, responsiveness where there was distance. These are not politeness. They are signals that recognition has already occurred. The dynamic has changed. Remain grounded. Do not inflate this moment or diminish it. Recognition does not require reaction. It requires steadiness. Let the awareness that has settled do its work without interruption. Your name entered their awareness at the right moment. And when recognition aligns with authority, movement follows naturally. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of what changed beneath the surface of authority. the resistance that once existed and no longer holds its ground. This resistance was not hostility. It was not opposition directed at you personally. It was hesitation shaped by responsibility, caution formed through consequence, restraint built from experience. Authority often resists not because it is unwilling, but because it must weigh impact before it moves. At one time, this hesitation mattered. It slowed decisions. It postponed action. It created distance between possibility and execution. You may have felt that distance without understanding its cause. You sensed restraint where you hoped for momentum, silence where you expected clarity. That was resistance, not against you, but against premature action. What has occurred now is not a reversal, but a softening. Resistance does not always disappear abruptly. Often it loosens gradually as clarity accumulates. A concern is addressed, a risk is resolved, a variable stabilizes. One by one, the reasons to hesitate lose relevance. And when that happens, resistance does not announce its departure. It simply stops influencing the decision. This is what has taken place. The internal barriers that once delayed movement have been resolved quietly, not through persuasion, but through understanding. Authority reached a point where hesitation no longer served wisdom. Once that threshold is crossed, movement becomes inevitable. You must recognize the significance of softened resistance. Hard opposition requires force. Softened resistance requires only timing. There is no longer a need to overcome. There is only a need to proceed. That is why what follows will feel smoother than expected. Less explanation, fewer conditions, more cooperation. You may notice this shift indirectly. The tone of communication may change. Language may become more open, more inclusive, more decisive. Processes that once felt rigid may suddenly feel flexible. These are not favors granted reluctantly. They are outcomes released confidently. Do not confuse this with instability. When resistance softens because clarity increases, decisions become more secure, not less. Authority is no longer guarding against uncertainty. It is acting from resolution. That distinction matters. It means what follows is not tentative. You are no longer navigating hesitation. You are moving within alignment. The dynamic has changed from consideration to execution, from review to response, from maybe to proceed. Do not revisit old assumptions about how difficult this needed to be. Difficulty belonged to an earlier phase. That phase has concluded. The resistance that once shaped the process no longer directs it. Remain steady. There is no need to press, no need to defend, no need to reintroduce explanations that are no longer required. Softened resistance clears the path quietly, and once the path is clear, movement follows naturally. What was once held back is now being released, not suddenly but securely. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of timing, because authority does not move simply because it can, but because it must. What is unfolding now could not have taken place earlier without creating instability, misunderstanding, or loss. What felt like delay was not indifference, it was precision. Authority waits not for convenience, but for alignment that can sustain consequence. There were moments when you wondered why progress stalled just as momentum seemed possible. You questioned whether opportunity had passed or if interest had faded. But the truth is this: movement at the wrong time weakens even good intentions. Authority understands this. That is why restraint existed until conditions matured. What is happening now required context to change, not your worth to increase. Timing aligned because multiple factors reached readiness simultaneously. Circumstances beyond your visibility settled into place. Competing priorities shifted. Pressures that once dominated attention eased. Authority gained the space to act without compromise. This convergence is what makes today different from yesterday. You were not overlooked during the waiting. You were being held in reserve until movement would serve both sides without friction. Premature blessing creates obligation. Proper timing creates partnership. That distinction matters. What is released now will not burden you with expectation. It will support you with structure. This alignment also protects the authority involved. When decisions are made at the right time, they are defensible, repeatable, and stable. Authority does not act when outcomes are vulnerable. It acts when outcomes can stand. That is why what follows will not feel tentative, it will feel resolved. You may sense this as a sudden openness where there was once formality, or responsiveness where there was once delay. These are signs that timing has shifted from restraint to release, not because pressure increased, but because readiness completed its work. Do not interpret the past delay as lost time. It was preparation without exposure. It allowed you to enter this moment without scrutiny, without the weight of premature expectation. Now, movement carries less risk and greater continuity. Timing has aligned not to test you, but to serve longevity. What begins now does not need correction later. It does not require repair. It proceeds cleanly because it arrives at the right moment. Remain present. The window is open because conditions are right, not because urgency demanded it. And what opens at the right time closes fewer doors behind it. This is alignment expressing itself through authority. And it moves now because it can move well. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of the decision that has already settled, formed quietly, internally, without announcement. Before authority speaks outwardly, it decides inwardly. Before words are released, conclusions are reached. What you are waiting to hear has already been determined in substance, even if it has not yet been expressed in form. This is how authority operates when it is certain. It does not test the decision aloud. It does not announce intention before commitment. It resolves internally first, ensuring that what follows will not require revision. That is the stage you are in now. The conclusion exists. The expression is pending. You may feel as though nothing has been confirmed because no one has told you directly. But confirmation does not begin with communication. It begins with resolve. And resolve has already taken place. The authority involved is no longer weighing options. They are no longer asking whether. They are considering how and when. This internal decision carries stability. It was not made emotionally. It was not influenced by external noise. It was formed in clarity, with awareness of consequences. That is why it will not shift easily. Decisions made at this level are not revisited casually. They move forward unless something disrupts alignment, and nothing is doing so now. You may notice this in subtle ways. A lack of contradiction where you once expected pushback. Silence that feels settled rather than uncertain. The absence of probing questions that would normally precede hesitation. These are indicators that the decision no longer needs debate. Do not mistake the absence of words for absence of movement. Internal decisions often create external changes before they are communicated. Systems adjust. Processes prepare. Pathways open quietly. By the time you are informed, much will already be in motion. This is why patience now is different from waiting before. Earlier, you were waiting for consideration. Now you are waiting for delivery. Those are not the same. One is uncertain. The other is procedural. What remains is timing, not approval. Remain composed. Do not attempt to extract confirmation prematurely. Doing so can introduce unnecessary complexity. Allow the decision to surface naturally in the way authority intends. When it does, it will arrive with clarity, not ambiguity. What has been decided internally carries weight. It does not depend on persuasion or reinforcement. It will express itself because it has already been resolved. You are closer to manifestation than you realize, not because something is forming, but because something has already been settled. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of favor that will not ask you to explain yourself again. What is approaching will not reopen old questions or demand repeated justification. Authority does not revisit what it has already resolved. When favor moves from consideration into action, it does so with confidence, not interrogation. That is why what unfolds next will feel unusually smooth. You have grown accustomed to defending your position, clarifying intentions, correcting assumptions, restating facts, proving consistency. That pattern is ending here. Favor that comes from authority does not require you to convince. It requires only that you receive responsibly. The explanation phase has concluded. What remains is execution. You may be surprised by how little effort is required from you now. Conversations will feel shorter. Decisions will feel cleaner. Processes that once required persistence will move forward with minimal engagement. This is not because standards have been lowered. It is because trust has been established. When authority trusts its own judgment, it does not second-guess through unnecessary hurdles. This ease may feel unfamiliar. You may instinctively brace for complications that never arrive. You may prepare for resistance that no longer exists. Be mindful not to recreate difficulty out of habit. Do not reintroduce explanations where clarity is already present. Over-justifying can slow what is meant to move freely. Favor without explanation is a sign of internal alignment. It means authority no longer needs reassurance. It has reached certainty, and certainty moves decisively. That is why the tone will shift from evaluative to cooperative, from conditional to confirmatory. This does not mean you abandon clarity or responsibility. It means you no longer carry the burden of persuasion. Your role is not to impress, but to respond appropriately. Provide what is asked, no more and no less. Let simplicity replace over-preparation. You may notice that requests become specific rather than general. This is another indicator that explanation is no longer required. Authority asks specifics only when direction is already chosen. Vagueness belongs to uncertainty. Precision belongs to resolve. Do not interpret this favor as indulgence. It is not leniency. It is confidence expressed through action. Authority moves this way when it is satisfied that alignment exists on both sides. Remain grounded. Accept ease without suspicion. Allow cooperation without anxiety. Favor that flows smoothly is not fragile, it is established. And what is established does not need repeated defense. What unfolds next will confirm this. You are no longer being evaluated. You are being supported. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of this day, not as a moment of pressure, but as a point of alignment. Today is not important because something dramatic must happen in front of your eyes. Today matters because movement that was internal has reached the edge of action. What has been forming quietly has arrived at the moment where it can no longer remain still. There are days that feel heavy because nothing seems to change. And there are days that feel ordinary even though everything has changed underneath. Today belongs to the second kind. The shift you are sensing is not emotional excitement, it is transition. Authority has moved from resolve to readiness. What was settled internally is now prepared to express itself outwardly. Do not confuse today with urgency. You are not being rushed. Alignment does not demand panic. It invites presence. Today is a marker, not a deadline. It is the moment where hesitation no longer governs the process. From this point forward, events respond more quickly because resistance has already been removed. You may notice small signs rather than grand confirmations. A response that comes sooner than expected. A tone that feels warmer. An openness that was not there before. These are not coincidences. They are indicators that internal decisions have begun to affect external behavior. When authority crosses into action, it does so subtly at first. Today also marks a change in your role. Until now, waiting was necessary. Now, attentiveness becomes essential. You are not required to initiate, but you are required to notice. Missed awareness can delay engagement even when favor is present. Stay present in your communications. Stay clear in your responses. This is not the moment to withdraw or disengage. Be mindful of your posture today. Calm readiness communicates trust. Anxiety communicates doubt. Authority responds more readily to steadiness than to urgency. Let your demeanor reflect confidence in what is unfolding rather than fear of losing it. If nothing outwardly visible happens today, do not interpret that as absence. Today is about direction, not display. Once direction is set, display follows naturally. Seeds do not announce themselves when they break ground, but growth has already begun. Today closes the gap between internal movement and external expression. What was delayed by timing is now released into sequence. From here, momentum builds without force. Remain composed. Remain observant. Today is not the climax, it is the turning point. And turning points rarely shout. They simply redirect everything that follows. I am Archangel Michael, And I speak now to still a fear that may have begun to whisper, the fear that what has shifted could reverse, that favor could fade, that today's movement might be nothing more than a momentary inclination. This fear is understandable, especially if you have seen kindness appear briefly in the past, only to withdraw again. But this situation is not driven by impulse. What has moved is not mood, it is resolve. Authority that acts from emotion often retreats when pressure returns. Authority that acts from clarity does not. What has taken place here was not a soft moment of generosity. It was a considered decision formed with awareness of consequence. That is why it carries follow-through. Temporary kindness hesitates when challenged. Resolved authority does not. You may be watching closely now, looking for signs of retreat, changes in tone, delays in response, silence that feels uncertain. Be careful not to project old patterns onto a new dynamic. The absence of immediate expression does not signal reversal. It signals order. Authority does not rush to reassure. It moves according to structure, not anxiety. There is a difference between kindness and commitment. Kindness can fluctuate. Commitment holds. What you are encountering now is commitment in its early phase, quiet, steady, and deliberate. It does not announce itself repeatedly because it does not need reinforcement. Once authority commits, it proceeds unless something undermines alignment. Nothing is doing that now. This is why you are being guided into calm rather than vigilance. Hyper-awareness can misinterpret neutrality as threat, silence as withdrawal, normal pacing as hesitation. Resist that urge. What is unfolding does not require monitoring to survive. It requires space to express itself naturally. If fear arises, recognize it for what it is. Residue from earlier seasons where instability was real. That residue does not define the present alignment. You are not guarding a fragile moment. You are standing within a stabilized decision. Authority does not reverse without cause, and there is no cause present here. What has been resolved internally has moved past reconsideration. The stage of doubt has concluded. The stage of implementation has begun. Let this assurance settle you. You do not need to prepare for disappointment. You do not need to brace for withdrawal. What has moved is anchored. What proceeds will do so with continuity. This is not a temporary opening. It is a directional change. And directional changes do not oscillate, they progress. Remain steady. Favor rooted in authority does not flicker, it advances. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of the reach of this blessing, because what is unfolding is not confined to a single outcome or moment. Authority rarely moves for something isolated. When authority acts, it considers consequence, continuity, and impact. That is why what has been set in motion will touch more than one area of your life, even if it appears to arrive through a single decision. You may be focused on the most immediate need, the approval, the opening, the permission you have been waiting for. And that is understandable. But understand this. When authority aligns in your favor, it often adjusts access, timing, and protection simultaneously. One act of favor creates room for others to follow. What opens first becomes a gateway, not a conclusion. You will notice that areas which once felt restricted begin to ease alongside the main development. Conversations flow more smoothly. Delays shorten. Opportunities that once felt unreachable come within range. This is not coincidence. It is the ripple effect of authority acting with coherence rather than isolation. Blessing with reach also changes how others respond to you. When authority validates a position, it subtly alters perception. Resistance from secondary voices weakens. Support becomes more natural. You may not be told why attitudes shift, only that they do. Authority sets tone, even when it is not visible. This reach extends to timing as well. What once required extended waiting may now require only readiness. The pace of progress accelerates not because effort increases, but because friction decreases. Systems begin to cooperate rather than obstruct. That is the hallmark of a blessing that carries reach. Be attentive, but do not attempt to control this expansion. Overmanagement can restrict what is meant to unfold organically. Allow the initial outcome to establish itself. The secondary effects will follow naturally, without force. You may find that the blessing also brings clarity about what no longer fits, what no longer deserves energy, what must be released to make room for continuity. This clarity is not loss, it is refinement. Authority-based favor simplifies as much as it expands. Do not underestimate small shifts. Reach does not always announce itself through dramatic change. Often it appears through consistency replacing volatility, through access replacing effort, through stability replacing correction. These are significant changes, even when they feel subtle. What you are stepping into is not a single answer to a single request. It is a repositioning, and repositioning affects trajectory. The direction you move from here will feel different because the ground beneath you has changed. Remain grounded. Receive what comes without narrowing your expectation to one outcome. Authority has moved with awareness of the whole, not just the part. And what follows will confirm that this blessing was never meant to be contained. It was meant to extend. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of restraint, not as limitation, but as protection over what is unfolding. When authority moves in your favor, discretion becomes essential, not because something is fragile, but because influence draws attention, and attention invites interference. What is forming around you requires space to settle without being pulled apart by premature exposure. You are entering a phase where how you carry yourself matters as much as what you receive. Authority-based favor is strengthened by composure. Calm preserves credibility. Silence protects momentum. You do not need to announce progress to confirm it. What is real does not require constant affirmation. There may be an urge to share, to explain what is happening, to justify why things are shifting, to seek reassurance through conversation. Resist that urge. Explanation invites opinion, and opinion invites distortion. What has been resolved does not need interpretation from those outside the process. Discretion does not mean secrecy rooted in fear. It means discernment rooted in wisdom. Choose carefully what you speak about and to whom. Not every listener is aligned with the outcome you are stepping into. Some will misunderstand. Others will project their own limitations onto your movement. Neither serves you now. This restraint also applies to action. Do not rush to expand prematurely. Growth that happens too quickly can strain structure. Let what has opened stabilize before you build upon it. Authority favors continuity over speed. The objective is sustainability, not spectacle. Be mindful of how you respond to new access. Respect preserves favor. Arrogance erodes it. Confidence is quiet. It does not announce itself. Let your demeanor reflect gratitude rather than entitlement, steadiness rather than excitement. Authority responds well to those who honor process. You may notice that fewer words are required now. Conversations become more direct, instructions more specific. This is not distance, it is efficiency. Do not fill silence with unnecessary explanation. Precision communicates trust. If pressure arises, from others or from within you, to move faster than clarity allows, pause. Pressure is not alignment. Alignment does not rush. It unfolds in sequence. Let each step complete before initiating the next. This phase is about guarding what has been given so it can multiply without loss. Discretion, patience, and composure are your safeguards. Use them well. What authority has opened does not need defending. It needs honoring. And honoring it now will ensure that what follows arrives without resistance, without complication, and without regret. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of the way this favor will express itself, because it will not arrive through the channel you have been watching most closely. Your attention has been trained by habit, by experience, by logic shaped through repetition. You learned where to look for progress, because that is where it used to come from. But what is unfolding now is not bound to your previous patterns. Authority often chooses an unexpected route when it intends to protect momentum. Familiar paths attract expectation, commentary, and interference. New paths move quietly, without resistance. That is why the expression of this blessing may surprise you, not because it is unstable, but because it bypasses old points of friction. You may expect a certain person to speak, a certain door to open, a certain process to advance. Instead, movement may come through a different voice, a different sequence, or a different opportunity altogether. Do not dismiss what appears simply because it does not match your anticipation. Alignment does not always arrive where you are looking, it arrives where it can move cleanly. This unexpected expression serves you in two ways. First, it prevents you from over-controlling the outcome. Second, it allows authority to act without pressure. When expectation is low, precision increases. Decisions are released without resistance because they are not anticipated or contested. Be attentive to shifts that feel incidental. A conversation that was not planned. A suggestion that feels minor. A door that opens without announcement. These are often the vehicles authority uses when it wants movement without disruption. Do not overlook what seems ordinary. What is ordinary on the surface may carry significant access beneath it. This is also why discernment matters more than familiarity. Ask yourself not, is this what I expected? But does this fit without force? Alignment carries coherence. It integrates naturally. It does not require persuasion or urgency. When you sense ease instead of strain, you are likely standing near the right expression of this favor. You may be tempted to redirect movement back toward familiar routes, believing they are safer or more legitimate. Resist that impulse. The unfamiliar path exists because it avoids complications you have already outgrown. Trust the direction even if it challenges your assumptions. This expression will not diminish your role. It will clarify it. You will recognize where to respond and where to remain still. You will sense when action is required and when patience preserves momentum. That clarity will not come from analysis alone, it will come from alignment. Remain open without being scattered, curious without being anxious. What authority releases now will reach you through a channel designed for continuity, not conflict. Let it arrive as it is, not as you imagined it should be. The blessing is moving toward you. Its path may be unexpected, but its stability will not be. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of what surrounds this favor, the protection placed over it before it ever reaches your hands. Authority does not release blessing without covering. Influence does not move without boundaries. What is coming toward you has not been left exposed to chance, misuse, or erosion. It is being carried within order. Protection does not always announce itself as strength. Often it appears as pacing, as limits that feel inconvenient, as doors that do not open all at once. These are not signs of restriction, they are signs of safeguarding. What arrives all at once is difficult to sustain. What arrives in sequence is easier to steward. You may notice that access is granted gradually, not withheld, but measured. This is intentional. It prevents overwhelm. It prevents misalignment. It ensures that what you receive integrates into your life rather than disrupting it. Protection works by preserving balance, not by eliminating movement. There will be moments when you are tempted to push beyond what is currently being offered, to expand faster, to secure more immediately, to leverage influence prematurely. Pause in those moments. Impatience can expose what patience protects. The covering over this blessing responds to restraint, not urgency. You are also being protected from unnecessary loss. Not every opportunity that appears alongside favor is aligned with it. Some invitations will look attractive but carry distraction. Others will promise gain but demand compromise. Discernment now is not about fear, it is about preservation. You will feel a quiet resistance toward what would dilute focus. Honor that resistance. It is part of the protection. Authority has also placed boundaries around who can access this development. Not everyone will have visibility into what is unfolding. This is not exclusion, it is insulation. It prevents interference from opinions that lack context. What is forming requires clarity, not commentary. Protection extends to timing of exposure. You will not be required to explain outcomes before they are complete. You will not be forced into justification while results are still stabilizing. The unveiling will occur when structure is secure. Until then, discretion serves you well. You may interpret some of this as slowness. It is not. It is accuracy. Protection prioritizes longevity over speed. What endures does so because it was guarded early. Be attentive to the boundaries that form naturally. Notice what feels closed without struggle. Notice where ease remains consistent. These are indicators of protection functioning properly. What is protected does not need constant defense. It holds because it is ordered. What authority has released toward you is not vulnerable. It is covered. And what is covered arrives with less risk, fewer reversals, and greater continuity. Trust the protection. It is not delaying your blessing. It is ensuring that when it fully arrives, it stays. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of proximity, because what is unfolding is nearer than your thoughts have allowed you to believe. You have measured progress by former delays, by long intervals between effort and result, by seasons where movement seemed distant even when hope remained. That measure no longer applies. The distance has closed. What once felt far has entered reach. You may still sense a gap, but that sensation is not delay, it is transition. Transitions often feel like waiting because the mind has not yet recalibrated to new momentum. Yet movement is already underway. The phase of preparation has yielded to execution. When this happens, events begin to compress. What once took months resolves in weeks. What once took weeks resolves in days. Not through pressure, but through alignment completing its work. Be careful not to anchor expectation to exact dates or rigid timelines. What is approaching is governed by readiness, not calendars. When alignment is complete, expression follows swiftly, and alignment has already been established. What remains is delivery, not debate. You will notice this closeness through subtle acceleration. Responses arrive sooner than expected. Processes that once stalled begin to advance without prompting. Conversations reach clarity instead of circling uncertainty. These are not isolated improvements. They are indicators that momentum has crossed a threshold. This nearness does not require you to rush. It requires you to remain present. Distraction now would not cancel what is coming, but it could delay your engagement with it. Awareness allows you to respond smoothly when opportunity presents itself. Absence of awareness creates friction where none is necessary. You may feel a quiet urgency, not panic, not pressure, but alertness. That is recognition, not anxiety. Your awareness is catching up to reality. When that happens, anticipation can rise. Let it settle into readiness rather than impatience. Impatience rushes ahead. Readiness remains steady. What is approaching will not overwhelm you. It will integrate naturally. That is why it may arrive sooner than you expect. You are already equipped to receive it. The steadiness you developed during waiting prepared you for this proximity. You are not catching up. You are synchronized. If doubt whispers that nothing has changed, do not argue with it. Simply observe. Observe the easing. Observe the responsiveness. Observe the subtle shifts in tone and access. These are signs of nearness, not imagination. The gap you thought remained is closing quietly. The movement you waited for is already within range. What was once described as later has entered the stage of soon, and soon arrives without announcement. Remain composed. Stay attentive. What is near will not miss its moment, and you will not miss yours. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of what is required from you as this nearness becomes reality, not in effort, not in striving, but in posture. There is nothing more you must prove. There is nothing you must chase. The role you hold now is quieter than action, yet more influential than you realize. It is the role of alignment maintained through composure. As movement approaches, the instinct is often to over-prepare, to rehearse conversations, anticipate every possible outcome, and mentally rush ahead of events. Resist that instinct. Over-preparation introduces tension where clarity is meant to operate. What is aligned does not require you to manage every detail. It requires you to remain centered so you can respond precisely when response is needed. Your posture now is one of calm readiness, not passivity, not urgency. Readiness means you are attentive without being anxious, prepared without being rigid, open without reaching. This posture allows what is unfolding to meet you without resistance. When you remain steady, movement integrates cleanly. Be mindful of how you speak during this phase. Words carry weight when outcomes are near. Avoid exaggeration. Avoid premature declarations. Let facts emerge before conclusions. Authority responds well to those who allow events to speak for themselves rather than narrating them in advance. Remain consistent in your daily rhythms. Do not abandon structure in anticipation of change. Stability in the ordinary supports clarity in the extraordinary. The habits that sustained you through uncertainty will now support continuity. Carry them forward without interruption. You may feel moments of anticipation rise unexpectedly. When they do, ground yourself in the present. Notice what is actually being asked of you now, not what you imagine may be required later. Precision lives in the present moment. Acting too early can be as disruptive as acting too late. Trust that you will recognize the moment to move. Direction will not be ambiguous when it arrives. You will not need to guess or force clarity. Until then, your role is to remain available without pressure, responsive without rehearsal, confident without display. This phase is not testing you. It is positioning you. The steadiness you demonstrate now determines how smoothly what is near integrates into your life. Calm preserves alignment. Alignment preserves continuity. Do not underestimate the power of restraint at this stage. What you do not say, what you do not rush, what you do not force, all of this contributes to stability. Precision often shows itself through what is withheld rather than what is expressed. Remain grounded. Remain attentive. The moment to act will arrive naturally, and when it does, you will meet it without hesitation, without confusion, and without regret. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of the confirmation that will come before evidence, the inner settling that arrives ahead of visible proof. This is not imagination trying to soothe uncertainty. It is not hope trying to protect itself. It is alignment registering internally before it expresses externally. When outcomes are secured, the first signal is not announcement. It is peace. You may notice this peace entering quietly, without explanation. It does not arrive because every question has been answered. It arrives because questioning no longer governs direction. Worry loses its grip not because circumstances have changed, but because authority has already resolved them. When resolution is real, it communicates itself inwardly before it manifests outwardly. This peace will feel different from relief. Relief comes after resolution. This peace comes before it. It steadies rather than excites. It grounds rather than rushes. You may find that thoughts which once spiraled now stop mid-movement. Concerns that once demanded attention no longer insist. This is not suppression. It is release. Do not dismiss this calm simply because nothing visible has shifted yet. Peace is not dependent on sight. It is dependent on alignment. When alignment is established, inner confirmation follows naturally. That confirmation prepares you to receive what is coming without panic or overreaction. You may notice that decision-making becomes simpler, choices narrow, distractions lose appeal, focus sharpens without effort. This is not limitation, it is refinement. Peace clarifies. It removes noise without force. What remains feels manageable because it is relevant. This inner confirmation also protects you from misinterpreting the early stages of movement. When doors begin to open, you will not feel compelled to rush through them. When communication shifts, you will not overanalyze tone. Peace anchors interpretation. It keeps response measured and wise. Be attentive to this signal. It is information. It tells you that the stage of uncertainty has ended, even if the stage of visibility has not yet begun. When peace precedes proof, it means resistance has concluded at the level that matters most. Do not attempt to justify this calm to yourself or others. It does not need explanation. It stands on its own. Proof will follow in time, but peace does not wait for it. Peace arrives because the foundation is secure. If moments of doubt surface, let them pass without engagement. They are echoes from earlier seasons, not indicators of present reality. Return your attention to the steadiness beneath them. That steadiness is the confirmation. This peace is not the conclusion of the process. It is the signal that the process has entered its final phase. What has been arranged is approaching visibility, and you will meet it not with surprise, but with recognition. Already steady, already prepared, already aligned. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of continuation, because what is unfolding is not a single act of favor meant to stand alone. Authority did not move merely to resolve one matter, and then withdraw. What has been released is a pathway, not a moment. A direction, not an exception. What you are stepping into is meant to continue if it is carried with awareness. Many misunderstand blessing as an isolated event, something that arrives, resolves pressure, and then fades back into normalcy. That is not what this is. What authority has initiated is a shift in access. Access changes how future decisions form. It changes how doors respond. It changes how timing aligns. One movement alters the landscape ahead of you. This is why how you receive matters as much as what you receive. Gratitude sustains flow. Entitlement interrupts it. Gratitude keeps awareness open. It acknowledges that alignment, not control, made this possible. When gratitude remains, continuation remains natural rather than forced. You will notice that after the initial outcome settles, new opportunities appear that feel connected rather than random. They will not arrive all at once. They will arrive in sequence, each building on the last. This is how continuity reveals itself, through coherence, not excess. Be mindful not to treat what unfolds as the peak. Peaks invite descent. Pathways invite progress. You are not being elevated briefly, you are being repositioned steadily. That is why humility remains essential. Not humility that diminishes you, but humility that keeps you receptive. Continuation also requires attentiveness. When one door opens, others respond subtly. Missed awareness can delay engagement even when access exists. Stay present. Stay responsive. Do not assume momentum sustains itself without participation. Alignment invites cooperation. You may feel tempted once relief arrives to disengage, to rest your awareness, to stop paying attention. Rest is appropriate. Disengagement is not. Remain quietly alert. Continuation favors those who remain aware without becoming anxious. This is not about striving to maintain favor. It is about honoring the process that produced it. When process is honored, repetition is unnecessary. Movement continues without resistance. Authority has not finished moving. It has begun moving. What follows will confirm this not through intensity, but through consistency. Doors will respond differently now. Timing will feel less strained. Support will feel more natural. What you are entering is not a moment to celebrate loudly, but a direction to walk steadily. And as you walk it with awareness, what has begun will continue, without force, without reversal, and without loss. Remain grounded. Remain grateful. What has opened was never meant to end quickly. It was meant to carry you forward.